welcome back, everyone. We are now dealing with chapter 5 of this book, Steven Erikson's Malazan Book of the Fallen, book number 1, book the beginning, Gardens of the Moon. This episode is probably going to go out in and around the end of the year, so happy holidays to everybody, wherever you are. We hope that if you are reading along, you're enjoying it with us. If you haven't and you want to get involved and read along, pretty easy to catch up the chapters we've already posted. And feel free to drop comments whether you are or aren't reading along.
Please
As
drop
usual,
comments.
The usual crew is here. Adil and Gareth and Doc Kevlar in his altered state is here with us too.
Using his civilian name.
Yes, using his real name.
Or is it my real name?
Next episode, he'll post his address and bank details.
Yeah. Looking for all Nigerian princes with oil fields that they need to get rid of.
Apologies to any Nigerian princes who may follow this channel.
They have a big Malazan footprint there, I think.
Yeah, just email me your details and your bank account details, bro. I'll send you that bridging loan. Lickety split.
Absolutely.
These 5 episodes have been the weirdest build-up to like a pyramid scheme pitch I think we've. So guys, if you want to see the remaining 38 episodes, all you need to do, you sign up. You get 2 friends to sign up. Then they get to.
Oh, you've got this planned out.
Money boys.
It's our Patreon.
Yeah. So you're saying Patreon's a pyramid scheme?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No, just this show.
Okay.
Just this show. Yeah.
Chapter 5, Darujistan. We've moved to the last remaining free city on the continent of Genabakis, or Genabakis, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And we start off with one of the, probably fair to say, the strangest scenes in the novel yet, which is told through the point of view of a controversial character called Krupp. That's how the author pronounces his name. I know the audiobook calls him Krupper. Some people call him Krupp.
Wow.
But the scene, unless I misinterpreted it, is a point of view of Krupp having an experience within one of his own dreams.
Yeah.
And we get some insight into the weirdness of his character, but also the weirdness of his dream, where he's complaining about his sore feet, and he makes his way up.
It's just suffering in his dream.
To this inn on top of a hill, and then there's somebody in a burlap sack tied up outside the inn, and then he goes inside, has a conversation with these beggars, and he's trying to work out while we're getting the narrative of what the meaning is of this dream.
Yeah.
I don't want to say any more other than it's an odd scene. What do you guys think?
I loved it, and I just, when I first read it, I just remember thinking like, so Darujistan has never really been described up until this point, and like the first glimpse we see of it is from this character's perspective, and basically as he goes through like the shit part of town.
Yeah, which he seems to love as well.
Exactly, but you sort of like have this vision in your mind that it's the city that they are just so desperate to sort of lay claim to. It must be gilded and gold and jewels and whatever. And it's like got a fairly large sort of desolate section where people live in like abject poverty. It's just interesting, like that's your first glimpse of the city that you get. But also I love the character. His like hilarious sort of inner monologue where he's just constantly paying himself compliments and sort of boasting about how smart and brilliant he is. It was great. I loved it. It was one of my favorite scenes so far, for sure.
Many people love Krupp as a character, and many have stopped reading the series because of it.
Wow. Okay.
He's very. If the novels are divisive, that character is one of the most divisive.
Is he like the Tom Bombadil of Malazan?
Nobody says a bad word about Tom in this podcast.
Ho ho, Mary Ding Dolo, whatever.
Hey, ho, Stereo.
Tom
Ring
Bombadil.
Dongadillo.
And off we go. Yeah.
Skibidi video number. I'm the scat man.
Catman, Tom
Tom
Bombadil.
Bombadil. Yeah, no, Crip, whatever. Yeah. I got like, what's his name? The guy that rolls the stone up the hill every day. Sisypheus, whatever.
No, I nearly said syphilis.
No, not syphilis.
Cepheus. No, the
Whatever.
Greek guy from Greek mythology, anyway.
Greek, Roman, potato, whatever. But I got those vibes.
Nobody says potato.
Yeah, I know, but I do. But I get those vibes. Like he's out in the city and he's going to go and do this thing, and it sounds like he does it a lot. Like I'm sure this isn't his first weird dream. That was the impression that I got.
Yeah. What's also like weird is that he's sort of super lucid in the dream, like aware that he's having a dream, and you'd think that he would have some sort of control over it, but like you say, it's just this miserable hike and his feet are bleeding, and it's it's very, very strange that he's so aware that he's having a dream, and yet it's still unable to sort of like make it a better experience for himself. It's bizarre.
I mean, I like the way he tries to work out the beggars, and he talks to them as to what they potentially represent.
Yeah, like are they my gifts? Are they my secrets or whatever? Yeah, it's interesting. And
then he works out that the one that's in the sack that he wouldn't allow into the inn is his humility. That was quite funny.
That was hilarious. Yeah, I love that.
And also, when you look him up in the Dramatis Personae, all they say is a man of false modesty. That's how he's described in the book. I'm like, fucking perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm not sure. The dream is a dream. I'm sure there's lots of people trying to interpret it, and I mean the point about it is Krupp himself is trying to interpret it as he goes.
What are your feelings about Krupp, Rob, as someone who's read the series?
I find him mildly annoying a lot of the time.
Oh, really?
I mean, I don't find him offensive in any way. I wouldn't stop reading, but I do find myself skipping sometimes.
Oh, really?
When he embarks on these sort of faux modest kind of, well, they're not even faux modest. They're just like completely sort of boastful, over the top, flowery language speeches about his own abilities.
And he talks non-stop as well.
He's
constantly.
I've met people like him.
They're called lawyers. Oh!
Whoa! Stop alienating all of our listeners.
I'm only saying that because
you're only saying that because he's already certified that document you needed him to stamp for you.
Yeah, he's too. I don't know. No, I don't mind him. He doesn't. I don't hate him. I know he's not my favorite character. Put it that way.
All right, cool.
But I do find that, we were just saying that we'd gotten in the previous chapters into a bit of a rhythm, and I feel like this chapter changed that rhythm again, right? It's almost like he changed style again, and he changed, and it started being harder. Like I found this chapter quite hard to read, actually. Like it was.
But I think it goes to something which I'm always going on about, and this is how much point of view plays a role in how Erikson writes. He is so invested in point of view. That the different characters will have a different way of telling a story when it comes through their point of view. Even the storytelling will change in the way it's delivered, and it can be quite jarring when you have a character like Krupp, who's an extreme, and he doesn't have a particularly organized mind. So when you get a point of view from him, it's
especially
kind of
in a dream,
it all feels a bit dreamlike in some ways.
Yeah, but it is strange how goofy the scene feels, after everything up until this point, apart from like the odd joke here and there, and what's that character called, the one who works with Lacine, the Claw? Topper, he's also like a little bit silly, but this scene felt like really quite goofy after everything that had sort of come before it, like, very silly, just sort of his sort of way of speaking.
Yeah, and up till now we've been dealing with military people, we've been dealing with, albeit mages, but people in the military, who have a certain way of doing things and a certain way of thinking. now we're getting to civilians, and this particular civilian who doesn't seem to have really any, his thoughts are kind of haphazard.
Yeah. It's true, like what you say, up until this point, we have basically been following soldiers or people who are somehow involved in the military.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I can't think of a lot of other times where we've actually followed like a civilian.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And then we go from this, when he's walking back, we get, as far as I can tell, one of the only instances where we have a complete, almost omniscient description of the city without a point of view. And it's just beautiful. To my mind, I love, for me, fantasy cities are just I love it. And this is, and the Rajasthan is one in my top 5, just in terms of descriptiveness and how it works and how it runs and what it looks like in my mind's eye.
Do you have a top 5?
Well, I haven't even considered, but if I had a top 5, it would be,
what would number 1 be, bro?
no, that's a very good question. Minas Tirith is probably
Minas
up there.
Tirith, yeah,
But the Rajasthan is definitely top 5. I mean, the idea of a city, a fantasy city that has this kind of gas reservoir underneath.
Oh, yeah.
It's so cool.
And
The
this
blue
blue
glow.
flame that just lights everything all the time. Well, it lights the more important streets. And these, I think they call them the grey faces, whose job it is to manage that system. And they live underground, and they live in that sort of world that exists in the subterranean just to keep
they
the
call
gas.
it an invisible dragon.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, I love that sort of almost technical. It's like a techno feel to the city.
Yeah, but that kind of also, in a way, sometimes for me, it pulls me out of it. Like I want my fantasy to be fantasy. Like I don't want elements of technology in it. Like I can't read something and there's magic, and the next minute there's gunpowder. I'm just like.
Well, I look forward to introducing you to the concept of Moranth munitions.
Okay, well, I'm worried now.
Yeah,
Magic in a bottle.
Yeah, but yeah, you've got such a journey ahead of you.
Yeah, but it does kind of. There's a caveat to that though.
Yeah.
It does almost pull me out, but the way that they did the gas was still, it's magical in a sense. The way that the way that they view it, like taming a dragon, whatever, that kind of. Because I read it and I was like, oh, gas, come on, dudes, really? And then I thought, okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah. It's interesting. It reminds me, I can't remember the name of that. There's like an old you'll know, an old D&D module where they basically it's a UFO that the characters are
Barrier Peaks.
Barrier Peaks.
There we go, exactly. And like, in the same way that they don't understand the gas reserve in this thing, and they just think it's like, or see it as this mysterious. I know they don't literally think it's an invisible dragon, but they don't understand it in the same way. And it's it's like, it's always cool in the same way that they did it in that module, and say like, you need to describe the stuff to the players in the way that it would make sense to their characters. They don't understand what like a big metal door is. They just or whatever, a glass window. So getting these descriptions of this technology through the characters that don't quite understand how it works is really like, it's awesome. Yeah, it's great.
But like the way, I'm sorry to go on again, but the way that it pulls me out is because the second they mention it, and it's the grey people that light it, I thought, okay, that's cool. But then my mind goes to but then how do they store it? And then how does it pump? And then how does it not explode? And
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, but that's the first thing that I think, like, have they got metal pipes, and have they got like little valves, and who's making all this shit? It's like, and then it just takes me out of it completely.
It's got I like a kind of steampunk aesthetic, which just feels a little bit like, to me.
No, steampunk's got to be steampunk. Fantasy's got to be fantasy, and westerns got to be westerns. You can't, like, I don't know. To me,
that's your thing, Al.
Must be. Like I like peanut butter and I like chocolate, but I don't necessarily like chocolate peanut butter.
So no Reese's Dark
Tower must freak you out.
No, I love the Dark Tower. I love the
I
Dark
don't
Tower.
want to remind you that you've got an amalgamation of a Western science fiction and fantasy in one novel.
100%, but I still think that it's built on what's gone before, and they have no access to it now. So a city was a city. Well, I suppose that's also wrong because it's seen with a train. But anyway, but it's Stephen King, and in my eyes,
Can't do any
He
wrong.
can do no wrong. I love me some king.
So on Darujistan, we now meet the young thief Crocus Younghand, who's on a bit of a thieving job when we meet him on the rooftops, and he sneaks into this kind of rich estate looking for the young eligible daughter's room to rob it. And I mean, we cut away from the scene before he actually comes across her, but I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to ride this point of view horse until it's dead. But
nay,
reading Crocus Younghand's point of view, it is so great because he's such a teenager. He's got such unfounded confidence in all his abilities. And he just the way he writes and he's like, he gets things right in this chapter, but he's got no concept of risk or failure or anything. I mean, he's like 16 or 17 or whatever.
17, yeah.
And I was just reading the prose again and just looking at it from the point of view, like it's so differently written. I mean, it is quite accessible when you hear it from his point of view, but it's also kind of oversimplified, like everything.
I like that though. I like that change.
Yeah.
Because we like I felt the first book was like this.
Yeah.
It's like you're focusing on this massive picture, and then now it's like zoomed in, and he's describing all his kit, and I love that kind of shit. Like, oh, he's got tar in his boots, and he's moving slowly, and he's got like a little lockpick, and I like that, like dialing into the detail, and I thought that was quite cool, coming off the back of the first bit. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of this scene in particular?
I do.
Yeah, I liked him, and the stuff in the shadows and on the rooftops and all of that again made me really think about some of that Terry Pratchett stuff with assassins and stuff.
That's exactly what I thought. Pyramids.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And when you get these, comical kind of collisions of two that shouldn't have been there at the same time, and you're just like, that really caught me, and I was quite engaged.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the point of view because I think it also just ups the pace hugely. I felt like this whole sequence was just felt like the closest thing it's come to being like a page turner. It really is like
breathless. Yeah,
it's like quite exciting, and you sort of like really get on the roller coaster, which it's it hasn't been a lot of that, which is quite exciting.
It's this scene where he describes about this particular saw. I know Alistair likes his rogues to have all the equipment and the top, the chalk and all the paraphernalia. He's got a saw which he's stolen from his uncle, who happens to be a alchemist, which is made of particularly the sort of hard, fine material. And then he saws through the lock, and takes him half an hour. I mean, of sawing to get through the lock.
Yeah, no one heard it.
Yeah, and then he basically robs the place, and we don't really get the scene of him encountering the daughter in the bed, because we cut away to another scene of an assassin, a guy called Tallow Crafar, who's busy on some or other mission on the rooftops, and before we know it, he just gets a crossbow bolt through the chest or somewhere.
Shoulder,
in his shoulder, and then he's sort of like I really like the way he's described as he doesn't, like, he's clearly a bit of an expert. He doesn't panic. He works out that he's not dead, and he's got to find some way to sort of work out who shot him and get them back. But it's kind of short. But it's one of those places in the novel where you get Crocus's point of view of robbing the room. Then you get a description of, I think it's Krull's, the god Krull's belfry or whatever the building is described. And then the buildings are further described, and then you're in this Tallow Crafar's point of view. And it was one of those cases where I didn't realize there'd been a shift in point of view at all and I found that it was a bit strange and a bit jarring. Because you get a character looking at some buildings, describing them, and then they're being described. They continue to be described, but they're actually being described by somebody else.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe
And
that's
it
just
also didn't
me.
help that they were all sort of like similarly dressed assassins running around on the same set of rooftops, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I like the fact that what struck me was that the crossbow bolt went straight through his shoulder. Like it didn't even embed in his shoulder. It's like
Yeah.
went straight
Yeah.
through. And that's why he knows it wasn't an assassin that tried to take him up,
Yeah,
because you could see the bolt.
yeah. And
Yeah,
then
like that.
he passes out,
Hmm.
if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he basically, so we get the description of him passing out, and then or we just go from his point of view straight to Crocus, who's back in the room, and I mean, like, it's the most teenage boy thing ever. You know, you're about to sneak out, and you see a hot girl lying in the bed. You know,
With no top on.
yeah, and he just parks there. You know, could got a bit more creepy, that scene, but it does. You know,
But I think doesn't he
Yeah.
get quite flustered and like a little bit
he does.
embarrassed?
He gets a bit thrown by the whole thing. You know, he was like such a pro up till that point. You know,
Yeah,
And then he becomes a 17-year-old boy.
yeah,
it's a great shift, that, yeah, absolutely. From this sort of national treasure master thief to,
Yeah.
oh, goodness gracious, I'm shy. Yeah.
It's a National Lampoon.
yeah. I mean, it's yeah, and I mean, I seem to recall he did rob her quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he took everything.
Yeah,
And then he even talks about sort of keeping some of it for himself. So he's obviously
yeah.
robbing
It's a
for
typical sort
someone.
of like 17-year-old boy.
I'm gonna keep the Rolex for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to
I'm
me,
sure she'll really like me if she got to know me. The fact that I just robbed her blind.
this section reminds me of Lieber's Lankmar. I love that, because the way they describe the fact that everything below the rooftops belongs during the day to the city, and everything at nighttime and the rooftops belongs to the guild. And I thought I like that a lot. That really just gave me like very Lieber vibes, the whole Lankmar city thing. I like that.
Yeah. Lankmar would be in my top 5 as well.
Oh, you see.
Now that we're talking.
Yeah.
And we
let us know in the comments what your top.
Yeah, let us know.
Favorite
Top 5
fantasy
fantasy
city.
We need to make a poll. Yeah.
Rivendell.
Tell us how much you disagree with Rob's choices.
Actually, I can really tell you 4. So we've got Darujistan, Minas Tirith, Lankmar. I'm going to throw Ankh-Morpork into that.
Nice.
And then I'll think about the 5th.
It's got to be the city from.
No, that's a bit derivative. You know what it is? It's Greyhawk.
Greyhawk.
Ah.
Yeah, see, I don't really see that as a city, though.
Well, it's called the City of Greyhawk, so I mean, that's the clue.
Yeah, I know, but I mean,
Sure.
if you say Greyhawk to me, I
told.
envision the whole land, which is called
Yeah,
Greyhawk.
no, it's not from a novel either. I mean, I suppose there were novels, but it's a
Yeah, there were. Yeah.
Well, anyway, back to Talo Krafar. So he comes to, realizes he's passed out, sees a shadow moving on the rooftops, assumes it's his assailant, and then just has a shot. And this is the scene where the spinning coin lands at Crocus's feet, bends down to pick it up, and gets missed by the crossbow bolt.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this whole chase scene and the cutting away, and then not quite knowing who is who and what's quite going on. And I was starting to like old Tello. I was really starting to get into him. And I like that idea that, so again, it's the spinning coin, right? So maybe the one side of the coin is the assassins, the other side is the thieves, and you got like they're very similar, but they're actually quite different. So they're two sides of that same coin, and using the rooftops and the way that they kind of collide there. So I'm interested to know where that's going.
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, there's in this exchange that happens and that forms this kind of chase. There's the thief. Then there's Talo Krafar, who's part of the Assassin's Guild.
Yeah. And
then there are these hunters, these 3 hunters who take him out and then chase Crocus, who are some other thing.
Yeah, which they haven't even said that they're human, right?
And they suggest that they aren't. Yeah. And that's the scene is like, it also feels like a movie scene. You can imagine a sort of POV camera following Crocus in and out of houses and buildings and landing in trees and running along these disguised tight ropes that form Monkey Road.
And there was almost like some.
Sorry, carry on.
There was almost like some physical comedy in there as well, right? There was like some points where he's running through the house and he says like, "Hi, uncle," and he like keeps going.
Yeah, does like a backflip and then starts eating his breakfast and like it's
like Spider-Man. Where you been? Nowhere.
Yeah.
It's definitely like Indiana Jones tongue-in-cheek vibes for sure.
Yeah, I did like that. But I do. Sorry, just to cut you off. I do. I do like the Monkey Road. I love that, and it's cool because it's also exactly what I wrote for DCC.
I thought about you when I read it again. I must say.
Yeah, the Underpants Alley, which is exactly the same thing, which is very, very cool. So yeah,
they have all these washing lines that span the alleyways, but hidden among them are these actual secured tight ropes.
Yeah,
that look like washing lines that all the assassins or thieves know and can use.
That's great.
Yeah, I like that.
Hidden in plain sight is awesome. That stuff is awesome. Yeah.
What did strike me is I actually kind of felt there's a lot of descriptions of injury and pain in this chapter. I felt it quite. I mean, the descriptions of the sort of injuries that Crocus does to himself in trying to get away made me feel genuinely anxious for him. Like, he gets away, but he's always falling and landing badly and cracking his head and then his knee and then something. He seems to dislocate a hip at one point, and it's quite physical how it's described. You don't get a lot, but that's the other thing. You don't. I mean, and it's told through his point of view, but he's not like a middle-aged man contemplating his mortality. He doesn't. He just kind of shrugs it off. It's a typical 17-year-old kid.
Yeah. He doesn't care.
I found that quite interesting. He doesn't seem to care that much.
But I did the one description of one of the hunters was that it was a female, that he thought it was a female, and that she was like north of 6 foot and very, very, 6.5 foot and very slender. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, what the hell? Because immediately when I heard like cloaks and all that, I thought of those two guys from right in the beginning with the hounds. I thought maybe they're up to something again because that's how they roll around. But clearly not. There's obviously some other sort of antagonist-protagonist thing going on here.
Yeah, and at the end, those three hunters get together when they eventually give up the pursuit. And they talk about, the one says, an ascendant meddled. And the other one responds, which in the most badass line, I think it was my favorite line of the chapter, which is, "It's been a long time since I killed one of them."
So good.
That was good.
So they're clearly referring to ascendants, but not necessarily that they are. Well, they certainly seem antagonistic towards them.
Well, at least now you know that an ascendant could be killed by a mere mortal.
No, but are they mere mortals, or we don't know?
Good question.
Fair point.
You see, so it's already we don't know what they are. It's just more mystery in the mystery bowl.
Yeah,
more layers of mystery.
Some more characters for you, yummy.
Yeah, there was also a D&D feeling in some of the scenes, but I was always looking for the stuff that may have come out of gaming, in these novels. But there's a sort of very perfect description of the Featherfall spell at one point.
Yes.
Where they suddenly cast the spell and then they jump down, but they just seem to float down to the surface of the roof below.
Did you ever play Bubble Bobble in the arcade? No. Can you imagine the little dragon jumping into the bubble? And then
that's
just,
clearly the real inspiration.
That's the real genesis of the Featherfall spell.
Oh man, Bubble. So cool. Good.
Yeah, no, I liked the scene. I thought it was good. It was a breath of fresh air. I could get behind it. There's not 50 million moving parts. It's just one dude breaking in, escaping, other assassin biting the dust, 3 mysterious hunters, rooftop chase.
Yeah.
Learning a lot about the city.
Yeah.
As he says, the night is the guild, and the daytime is the governance or whatever they call it. I can't remember. But I like that. So you already know, okay, there's a structure here.
And it's great that the city there's a map in the book of the city, which is
Yes,
yeah,
there is. I'd forgotten that. I didn't look at it actually.
yeah.
Where's the map?
At the beginning?
Oh,
What?
Yeah, there's a map of Darujistan. I think.
Oh yeah, you're
maybe
right.
maybe it's not an L's version.
No, it is.
probably
Here we are.
few
Boom.
of them.
Darujistan.
Yeah, I've got to say again, dudes. Like I had to split this book in half, bro, to read it. I'm so annoyed.
Yeah, that's true. And it's got all. I mean, yeah, some of the things that are described in this chapter are actually on the map as well.
Yeah. Even when what's his name?
Two
Krupp
Ox
is
Gate.
going for his walk. He talks about the Gadrobi district and
Yes.
all
Yeah, he
that
talks,
stuff.
and is it Two Ox Gate? He goes out.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great name for a city gate as well.
Two Ox Gate.
I'll tell you what, bro. Erickson, on the name front, he's got it in spades, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the naming of things.
Yeah.
I do like them. Although, isn't Jenna Backus from Star Wars? Or am I being...
Geonosis.
Was it Geonosis? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, so I wouldn't know.
Neither am I. I just didn't. That name just didn't come to me from. No, I think it's Geonosis. There may be a Jenna Backus in Star Wars. I don't know.
Trust me, someone who's watching this will correct us down in the down below.
So this scene is got a sort of a chase feel to it, like very similar tone to the previous chapters, or very different as far as you guys are
different,
very
way different.
Yeah,
way different.
For sure.
Yeah, it's almost more. I mean, we as you said, we stopped. We almost got one point of view for the whole chapter, except for Krupp. And you just get Crocus being chased, and he ends up. At some point, the suggestion is that he's having his retreat covered by accomplices. There's a scene I think describes as somebody knocking pipe on a shoe as he comes past, suggesting they're sort of sending signals or something to that effect.
Oh, the old lady sitting outside smoking a pipe. Yeah, and she puts it out in a boot.
Yeah.
But I also liked the way that they suggested that stuff was familiar to him, right? Because that was his home territory. And so he would jump off a building without looking, and because he knew what was there. And like I liked that, without having to say, okay, this is where he lived. He was suggesting that it was all familiar. And I like the idea of, and again, maybe it's a bit of that like Spider-Man kind of vibe, right? It's like this is my Manhattan, and I know this kind of area like the back of my hand. It did have that feel.
Yeah, it's the most sort of fantasy you would expect. You'd expect this in a fantasy book.
Yeah, it feels like Brandon Sanderson more than Steven Erikson. Yeah.
I've never read him, but yeah.
I think it's Darujistan. It's introducing us to the characters who live in Darujistan. We know that we've got this thing called the Malazan Empire, who we have effectively been told we must associate with. That's going to take over the city and add it to the empire. But now we've got a whole lot of people who actually live in the city and are going about their own lives and doing their own thing.
Because they know it's coming. Because I mean, Krupa mentions it in his. I think Krupa mentions it in his dream.
He seems to know.
They're coming because he knows the Pale's fallen and they're next. Yeah, but I like that. And also, I liked Uncle Mammoth with his little dragon monkey thing.
Yeah, that's Crocus's uncle. He's the alchemist. He runs through his house.
It's
part of the chase.
Yeah, and he shouts at the kids like, "Don't you ever sleep?"
Yes.
Like, scatter out the way.
But isn't there also when he goes out of the window and then he jumps and lands in a tree, and he hears someone else falling quite heavily, and then at the end one of the hunters says to the other one, "I'm sorry, I had an altercation with a cat or something."
Yeah. What happened to you? The first hunter asked quietly in his native tongue, had an argument with a cat. Yeah.
Also, he talks about it in his native tongue as well. It doesn't tell us what that is.
And the other one says the other agreed. They say all in all, too awry to be natural. The other agreed. You felt the parting then.
Mm.
So I was like, oh, okay. What's the parting?
Mm.
And then they say an ascendant.
Intervened.
Yeah.
Or meddled.
So,
and they end the chapter by then asking, who do you think protected him? And he says, someone with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's nice and short and sweet and just lots of action.
Yeah. It's a lot of people who read the novel find that is the chapter that gets them into it. Maybe because it's more simplistic in that sense.
Yeah, it's super digestible.
It's more straightforward, man. Like a lot of people say, no, what got me into that was the rooftop chases and that because it felt familiar. It felt
it feels like fantasy.
And also, I think at that point, you've gone through the first book, you've read Pale, you kind of like, okay, taken that, compartmentalized that. I think I've got this Erikson thing under my belt.
Yeah.
And then you like, okay, cool, ready to start book 2, and you go into something that's particularly easy compared to the stuff that's come before it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're like, wow, I'm loving this, because it's exciting and all of a sudden feels easy to read.
Yeah, and I think at the end, as I recall, Crocus ends up at the inn, the Phoenix Inn, because I've just seen that on the map when I went, which described as a bird lying face up, which I thought was hilarious. It's a bird lying with its legs in the air, and it's called the Phoenix Inn.
Remember that.
Oh my gosh.
And then sort of that's his safety. He arrives at the inn, and that's the inn. Like that's his sort of safe space.
Yeah.
Reminded me a little bit of Shaun of the Dead, where they spend the whole movie trying to get to the pub.
Yeah.
I think it's called the Windsor, and that's
the Windsor, the Windsor Arms.
It felt a bit like that. Okay, well, I'm safe now. These terrible 3 assassins that have chased me across the whole city are surely not going to chase me in here.
It's almost a bit like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, because it's
Yeah.
the bar lady looks at him and he's obviously like all bruised and broken, and she says, "Rough night, Crocus."
Yeah.
Mondays,
cool,
am I right?
Yeah. Monday on the rooftops, man.
Yeah.
That was good.
And that's where he sort of ends up, and I think that's the end of the chapter.
That's it. That's nice,
short,
nice and
sweet,
short.
delightful.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like someone else wrote these chapters. It's just,
well, I mean, there's
so
a lot of
different.
that. There's a lot of that in Erikson where you get to a point where you think, no, but this can't be in the same series even.
Yeah.
But is it the same? I mean, I don't know. But you said in the first episode that you had a writing partner.
No, he had a gaming partner.
Okay.
And they both have written novels set in the same world.
Okay.
So Ian Esselmont, who's the other one, has written a whole series of novels called the novels of the Malazan Empire. And he and Erikson writes the Malazan Book of the Fallen, and between them they cover the full span of the eras they gamed with. Yeah, that was their system that they spent most of the time gaming with.
Okay.
GURPS. And so these characters were developed and fleshed out in the role-playing game.
Okay.
And it's a lot of the reason I think why, like, sometimes when we meet them, you just get a sense there's history to a lot of them. Because these little sort of snippets and lines which refer back to things they've done in the past, which may not be even significant for the plot, but you just gives them a little bit of depth, I think.
Yeah,
but it's very much the whole in media res. There's no hand holding, bro. It's just off you go.
I think we've gotten more used to that now, right? I mean, even it's only been a few chapters, but I think we're not expecting a whole lot of backstory. We're not expecting to be shepherded through it. It's just like, okay, fine. What's next? Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, and this novel in particular, the series is I think, because I think it's quite difficult to get into. I mean, the foreword, Erikson himself says it. He says,
no. Carry on. Carry on.
Some people are going to love this
please.
novel. Other people are going to put the book down after a while.
Yeah, it is one of those.
And I think it is I think there is a bit of a sort of hurdle to get over, which is the sort of just feeling slightly out of it. Not having your thumb on all the details all the time is not a feeling that a lot of people are comfortable with.
No. No. And I mean, I've read a lot of fantasy, and honestly, this is the first time that I've ever come across that. Ever. And I have literally thousands of books, and this is seriously the first time that I've come across something as jarring as that. And I said that to you years ago when I read the first page, and I was like, what? And I had to read it again, and I read it again just to find out what the hell was going on. And not just in the sense that, oh, you're lost, but just the style of his writing, Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's finding that groove.
Yeah. And to me, this looks like Wallace's Monument. Have you ever seen Wallace's Monument in Edinburgh? No. Well, my camera's not the best, but very reminiscent of that.
Does Wallace know that you've got a picture of his monument?
Why do you have a picture? Who is Wallace and what is his monument?
Does he consent to the picture of his monument being used on the show?
William Wallace, you heathens.
William Wallace.
The Braveheart guy.
William Wallace's Monument.
Isn't he Australian?
Take away his freedom.
Don't joke, bro.
He did Passion of the Christ.
I saw a documentary, and there was a guy he took off his shirt, and he was a Scots guy, and he's like, oh look, I got William Wallace tattooed on my back. And not a fuck is it William Wallace, man, it's Mel Gibson.
As Mad Max.
I just thought, dude, really, come on,
man.
Like I'm all for Scotland, and I'm all for all of that, but just don't do that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, wow.
All right.
I feel safe in saying that because I doubt the chance he's a Malazan reader.
Well, you never know. I mean, there's some they hide under rocks sometimes. Actually, they don't. They're a bit like CrossFit people. They tell you when they're into.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's funny. I find it so interesting. We're talking about that jarring nature of the style. I think it's got something. I mean, God, I sound like a stuck record, but I think it's got something to do with the way in which point of view is handled. Like in traditional fantasy stories, we learn fairly early. We get enough clues to work out who the character is with whom we are supposed to associate.
Yeah.
And we hitch our expectations and our experience of the book onto that character's point of view, which we generally trust quite heavily. And then we maneuver through the novel in that point of view. And our experience changes and sort of grows with that character's experience. Yeah. There's no attempt to do that here. You get points of view from.
So here for me then. Here for me then, Rob, is if you got your 5 top cities, then how does this series or how does this book and all of them stack up for you? I mean, is this like your favorite? Is this your best you've ever read? I mean, you've always spoken highly of it all the years that I've known you. So
yeah.
I mean, is it up there?
It's going to seem hyperbolic, but it's my favorite fantasy series of all time. For many reasons, but mainly because I got very jaded on fantasy. It felt, ever since Stephen Donaldson, basically, I felt fantasy's got like it got very samey, got very sort of faux Tolkien-esque, and then in the 90s onwards, it got very much like I've got to be grungy and smaller, darker, grungy stories with people in fantasy worlds who somehow think and act exactly like people in the 2000s in America. And I got very sort of jaded and bored of the whole thing. And this was like it was very much a kind of refresher for me. It was jarring and it was completely alien in a lot of ways, but it was, I felt it was like suddenly there was an author who could write good literature, but just happened to be a fantasy fan.
Because it's no mean feat. I mean, as you know, traditionally and I hate it, most fantasy books are, it's a trilogy, just write one. I'm happy with just one. It doesn't have to be, but the fact that the dude's written 10 and the fact that you love them so much because you've read them already and you're reading them again.
Third time,
A third time. I mean, okay. I mean, there's not many people that would read 30 books.
Look, there's not many books that you can get so much out of on a second or third read, to be honest. I've just realized how much I left on the table on my first read, just going through it with you guys. It's incredible to me I mean, obviously you don't pick things up because you don't realize the significance of things when you're first reading it, and that's just natural.
Yeah.
But the realization that the author did is mind-blowing in terms of the scope of just how much stuff has to be in your head to plan a series like this.
Yeah.
It's just,
Oh, dude! I mean, I'm
does-
talking from experience here. That's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like
His-
it's intended to be read once, you know.
Yeah, I know. I think his wall must be like the assassins, like red lines and post-its and notes and big question marks and JFK and all this kind of it's
Murder board.
Yeah, exactly. It's murder. It's like it must be his entire house, where, it's just like every room.
I wonder. I mean, and then you're trying to make it match with a co-author. He's another adult who's writing novels more or less that span the same time span in the same world with characters that overlap. It's like the imaginative scope of it is a bit mind-boggling, I must say.
Yeah.
It is.
Anyway,
it is indeed.
Hopefully, I've said enough good things about it that Mr. Erikson will come onto our chat next time.
Absolutely.
Our New Year's resolution to get him on the show.
Yeah, we'll just keep abusing him till he comes on.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys.
Happy note.
Yeah,
Merry
on that
Christmas.
happy note. Or we'll take Ian Esselmont if he agrees.
Yeah. So we're reading the other guy's book.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
It's very different. I've read a couple of them. They are very, very different. Much more sort of, I would describe them as much more normal in their approach to storytelling.
Okay.
And that doesn't necessarily mean in a good way, I suppose.
Okay.
But anyway, enough about them. You guys have a good one.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Cheers, guys.
Thank you guys for your insights.